I confess to having too good a time on Yom Kippur. Listening to the beauty of this service, to Cantor Rabin and Rabbi Reeser and the choir and the music and all of you chanting such a strong sound, and it's been 3 years, So there's some joy this Yom Kippur. I was thinking of my grandmother on my father's side. She came over from Poland after World War I. My grandfather came over in 1912, and my grandmother didn't get to come over with 3 children till after the war. They were separated by World War I. My grandfather actually, they were on the Lower East Side for a while, but then he opened up a tailor shop, a dress shop on Caroline Street in Saratoga Springs, and sold dresses to the students at Skidmore College. And I know we have a number of people here who have gone to Skidmore College. 2 of my daughters actually went to Skidmore College, so I was able to show them where their great-grandfather's store was. But when Mama Shana, Pretty Mama, that was my grandmother on my father's side, we called her Mama Shana. When she came over, she wanted to learn English, and they were on the Lower East Side, they were on Essex Street. And like you see in so many shows and movies of that era, she was learning English and listening to English as it was being spoken on the streets, and trucks go by, and the family loved to listen to her. And one day, the Drake's Cakes truck went by, and she said, "Oh, look, Drakus Kakus." And that was the end of her. Everybody just laughed too hard at that one, and that was the end. It was all English at that point for the family, and Yiddish for Mama Shan. I'm going to come back to Yiddish in just a moment. I was visiting some of my kids and grandchildren up in Massachusetts, and staying at and some of you know the Charles Hotel in Cambridge, and you open up the night drawer right next to your bed, and what's there but Gideon Society has placed a Bible, right? How many of you have gone to the hotel and you open up the side drawer? Isn't there a Bible there? And when I think about it, if you start reading it, this lovely couple eats one thing that they shouldn't, and they're thrown out of the garden. And then one brother kills another. And then there's a flood, and everybody gets wiped out, the innocent and the wicked. And then there's Sodom and Gomorrah. Then there's the story that Rabbi Reeser explained so beautifully last week with Abraham and Isaac. And this is supposed to put you to sleep or wake you up. Why can't it be like Goodnight Moon they put in the drawer? Or our own Alyssa Capicilli's A Biscuit, something like that. And the prayer, I was thinking of this because of the prayer book in your hands. Does it give us solace? Does it give us comfort? Well, in many ways it does. But it's also what's known in Yiddish, and some of you will know this word, a kachlefel. How many of you know what the word kachlefel? Oh, good, we're going to have a little Yiddish lesson. Kach in German is to cook. Leffel is a spoon. A kachlefel is a cooking spoon, or it's something that stirs things up. In a family, there's usually more than one kachlefel. And you probably have a kachlefel in your life. Well, this book is a kachlefel. It stirs things up. And it's actually a counterculture. It is supposed to not make us become, solaced about the life that we lead and the world that we live in. It's supposed to stir up within us some concerns, some deep concerns. The late poet Yehuda Amichai wrote in a book called Open, Closed, Open, beautiful book of poetry. He writes this way about about the Jewish people and the prayer book. When God packed up and left the country, he left the Torah with the Jews. They have been looking for God ever since, shouting, "Hey, you forgot something. You forgot something." And other people think shouting is the prayer of the Jews. Since then, we've been combing the Bible for hints of God's whereabouts, because it says, "Seek the Lord where he may be found. He is near." But God seems so far away. This prayer book, this High Holiday prayer book, is a kachlefel. We're shouting at God. We're shouting at God about ourselves and about the world that we live in. In the Middle Ages, after a pogrom, there was a rabbi who rewrote Michamocha. We say Michamocha by Elim Adonai, who is like you among the gods that are worshipped. He wrote, "Who is like you among the gods who do not listen, who are deaf to our prayers?" The prayer book was always a challenge as much as it gave comfort to the people. And it was, as you know, Reinhold Niebuhr, the great Protestant theologian, who said religion is supposed to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. We as a people are a kachlefel unto ourselves and unto the world. Look at what we just sang with Kol Nidre. The very beginning. The Hebrew is translated, really incorrectly. It says that we are given permission just before Kol Nidre to pray with sinners, the righteous with sinners. And then with Kol Nidre, we say, may we be forgiven for the vows we've made and the vows that we will make from this Yom Kippur to next Yom Kippur. And in one version of the Kol Nidre, it's we ask to be forgiven for the vows we haven't kept from last year. Last week, we pray to God, we say, "You remember everything." This week, we pray to God, "Forget about it." And forget about next year. What is really going on in this prayer book? 50 years ago, these high holidays, was the Munich massacre in Germany at the Olympic Games. It was my first Rosh Hashanah at the synagogue, and the Munich massacre occurred 5 days before the holiday. The following year was the Yom Kippur War, 1973. When I look back at that time period, what was fascinating is what followed in Montreal 4 years later. The Olympic Committee developed something, it's a wonderful metaphor. It was called an antipathy matrix. An antipathy matrix, a hatred matrix. And they did the Olympic Village, they organized it, that if countries were not having good relations with each other, you placed them further apart on the matrix in the Olympic Village. And that's how they organize the Olympic Village now. Not according to how the nations that are getting along with each other, but to keep the nations, the teams away from each other that are filled with animosity. Imagine the Middle East. Are they liberated territories? Are they occupied territories? What kind of neighborhood, we say, is Israel in? Is it an antipathy matrix? Why did Theodore Herzl think about going to Uganda instead of having the promised land where it is? This is a concern in our world today. How can we have a globe that will have an antipathy matrix? How do you keep nations away from each other that aren't getting along with each other? It's not possible. But let me give you a different vision before I move ahead on this. Imagine when you're doing tables at your bar and bat mitzvah receptions. An antipathy matrix? Who gets seated where? You know? What about wedding receptions? Think about how you go through all the relatives, who at the table gets along, who should sit here, who should sit there. I mean, we're allowed tonight, the righteous with the sinners. How many of you are sinners? Because we could have you up here on the side. An antipathy matrix, you see? We could have those believe in God, those who don't believe in God, a special section for the agnostics. I mean, if you start thinking about this, and then you realize that the world that we live in at this moment, when we think of Ukraine, when we think of hurricanes, when we think of missiles being fired, over Japan, we realize that there is no antipathy matrix. That the model that we actually have on Yom Kippur, even though we have it within this kachlefel of a prayer book, we start last week, each one of us passes before God, and our life is decreed, our future is decreed, and we can change it. That the unisana tokef, who shall live and who shall die. We start with an individual, then as concentric circle, we were reading in the Torah about family life. And then tonight, Kol Nidre, it's peoplehood and the complexities of peoplehood. And by the time we get to tomorrow, it's the covenant. You, Atem Nesavim, all of you, you're young, you're old, the stranger in your midst, from the person who chops wood to the person who draws water, all of you enter into the covenant with God. There is no antipathy matrix, and Rabbi Risa will be talking tomorrow afternoon about Jonah. Jonah, he has to go talk to the enemy and include the enemy and see to it that the enemy changes the enemy's ways. And Jonah changes his ways. And the people of Nineveh change their ways. This is not an antipathy matrix. It's all-inclusive. And that's what we have to think about on this holiday. I'm amazed. The room I love the most is the library. All those books. The people who wrote those books couldn't stand next to each other without being in an argument all the time. But once they become books, they rest peacefully. I think I've spoken to you. If I were able to build an institution for Jewish life, it wouldn't be a museum, and it wouldn't be a library. It would be a planetarium. We need constellations to look up to that don't compete with each other, that will acknowledge each other and bask in each other's radiance. We have to look up instead of looking down. That's the vision, not an antipathy matrix, but exactly the opposite. Okay, one more Yiddish word, and I'm finished. Have any of you heard of the Broigus Tansa? The Broigus Tansa. Okay, the Broigus in Yiddish means anger. In Hebrew, it's birogez. Birogez, the Broigus. Tansa is dance. It's the anger dance. The anger dance. And it takes place in East European Jewish weddings. And it's danced by, now you have a bride and a groom, you've created a family. Now there are 2 new mother-in-laws are created as well. The 2 new mother-in-laws do the Broigus Tansa. And I know that, and please don't start Googling this while I'm talking to you. I know you can no longer ask for your undivided attention. Everybody's wondering how Aaron Judge is doing right now and where the Mets game closed up. This is the day of judgment for Aaron Judge, we will hope tonight. The Broigus Tansa is so convoluted. These 2, the Yiddish word Schwäger. Schwäger, well, it really comes from the German. It's a mother-in-law. The 2 Schwägers, the new mother-in-laws, dance, and if you can find it on a YouTube. It's the contours. They are showing in their dance the disarray and the arguments and the disagreements that are going to take place in the family as soon as the wedding is over. And the dance goes on until slowly but surely they dance in harmony and peace. Isn't that beautiful? The Broiges Tanze. I want you to know that we are in a Broiges Tanze with God. That's what Jewish history is. We are in a Broiges Tanze within our people and within the world. Yes, there's anger. Yes, there's hatred. You know what peace is? Amos Oz said what peace is. Peace isn't loving your enemy. It's not killing your enemy. Let's not worry about having coffee and cake and being together as brothers. Let's just not kill each other. That's peace, according to Amos Oz. The Broiges Tanze says there might be all of that antipathy in the matrix of the world that we live in. But we have to see it as a dance, and we have to reach towards harmony, and we have to acknowledge that the prayer book is a kachlefel, and we are in a Broiges Tanze, and we need to get there together, and that's why we're here as a congregation. That's what this community is all about. Hey, God, you forgot something. Hey, God, we're yelling at you. We're doing the Broiges Tanze. These holidays are a gift of reality. You've heard me speak about the late Walter Kaufman, who taught philosophy at Princeton. He writes about the greatest attribute of Judaism is the intimacy that we have, and with God, with ourselves. His imagery goes back to Tevye, years before there was Fiddler on the Roof. Being to have that sense of discussion and dance and kachlefel, and to come together in peace. Leonard Cohen said it best, all right? Dance me to the end of love. Dance me to the end of love. Shana Tova.